to the OShow for the first time, coming to you live to tape from Hamilton City Hall Council chambers. Why? Because it's a new era and we have a new council, and apparently they're okay with media like Joey Coleman doing just that. But with all the good stuff happening with the new councillors and all of their promises and the stuff we heard about from iElect in terms of what they value, what about what's happening with the city staff? We heard news this week of another sewer leak. This one's been around for 26 years. And what about the mess of an election that the city clerk did? And it was a national embarrassment. And now we find out the city's website isn't even updated after the election. And on it goes. We have, as I mentioned, Joey Coleman, journalist coming from Hamilton City Hall. He just finished up with the council meeting. And Mary Lou, who was on the show many times as the urban planning expert. But now we have her back after a trip to Australia and having run one of the most professional campaigns for mayor that I have ever seen. She was the campaign manager for Keanin Loomis, and Mary Lou, by all measures, even though Keanin lost by 1% to our current mayor, Andrea Horvath, anyone who saw that campaign was impressed by the effort and the professionalism. So congratulations on a well-run campaign, and it's great to have you back on the show.
Thanks very much, Laura. It was Team Loomis that ran the campaign, and so honored to be part of it. And it's great to be back.
We want to give this new council a chance to prove that they really can make the differences that we all wanted so badly, and why so many of you voted out the old guard. But there is also some other questions about how our city hall is managed, this culture of mediocrity we've talked about for decades, it seems. And how is it, and I'm going to go to you on this, Joey, because you were the first reports I saw on this after this hurried press conference this past week. How is it that we missed another sewer leak after the scandal of Sewergate, which in part brought down our city council?
So this is literally, as I wrote in my column, a shit happens event. When you're dealing with large systems like this, there's going to be human error. And when you look at the specific location of this pipe and how the human error occurred, it's actually like a perfect storm of everything that would cause it not to be found. But we're also dealing with a very good response once it was found.
Yes.
So we found out a little bit more information today, where we got to see some of the design drawings from 1996. They were just presented about 2 hours ago in this very chamber where I sit right now. And you have to go back to 1996, where everything's still manual drafting. We don't have GIS, we don't have CAD, we don't have the computer files that we have today. So a designer of this pipe looked at a situation that was going on. They believe it was related to regular flooding, and decided to cut an intentional hole in this pipe, believing that they were dealing with a stormwater pipe instead of a sewage pipe. And then it's in, and over the years, as it's inspected for other reasons. So it's inspected for structural integrity. Well, if you are a technician that's looking at only structural integrity, you're not a water engineer, you're not an expert on sewer flow, what you see is a pipe that is actually very clean for a pipe. Its integrity is intact. Now we come forward to 26 years later. They're doing minor road work, so road work on the minor roads around Burlington Street, and they're doing their technical analysis ahead of time. And what they're determining is, well, we're going to be stripping these roads. Do we need to do any underground work? Let's check all the pipes, because it's very expensive to rip open a road.
Right.
And then the water staff look at this and they immediately go, wait a second, this is a sewer pipe with a cut, draining down uncontrolled. What's going on here? They open up the manhole. They realize it's going into an outflow. The outflow itself we're right at the end of the outflow. We're only dealing with 50 homes, which is a small amount of the 250,000 connections in the city of Hamilton. The only time that water would go out and check something like this is when they get a complaint. Well, as far as the residents were concerned, they flushed the toilet, it disappeared. And so you have a huge amount of symptoms. There's literally nothing that I can think of that the staff did wrong after that initial human error in 1996.
People are gobsmacked that it got missed. So Joey, shouldn't there have been an all hands on deck, alarm response, going the extra mile to check for any other sewage flowing into the water around Hamilton after what happened with Sewergate?
So, Laura, as you know, I studied hydraulics and hydrology. I audited municipal engineering at the University of Toronto as a Southam Fellow. And so this is actually, I remember when I did the subdivision project and I'm like, well, this isn't really what I'm going to be covering, but heck, it's a good challenge.
Ah, good to
And
know.
the reality of these systems is that the cost of that analysis citywide
Mhm.
is quite high. Mr. Winters, the director of water who took over a year ago, who one of the first things he said was the first staff member to just come out and say that Coots was unacceptable, full stop, no excuse.
How was he
Sorry.
the first person to say that? I had no idea. You're telling me the city manager never said that the sewer gate leak into Coots was unacceptable, full stop?
They always had excuses. This was a full stop. It should not have happened. It diminished public trust. If you recall, when it came out, the city manager's focus was calling police and asking police to find the whistleblower. Like
This is the
this,
same city manager we currently have. We're talking about Jeanette.
yes, yes.
I forgot
And
about that.
so
I'm angry.
this is where your social capital matters. That Mr. Winters has been honest throughout his tenure, including at times where he's emitting errors or less than perfect performance. I asked him for some detailed schematics that I could look at based upon having studied this, and he immediately provided them without questions as quickly as he could. And so, in terms of this being missed, this is like a perfect storm of 50 people, a outflow that goes into a large harbor that is submerged. It's at a point where the amount of flow that it's dropping into is so large that literally if they submerge somebody and they were testing the water quality daily, this would not have registered enough to trigger an investigation.
But let me go to you, Mary Lou. You have worked at the city of Hamilton. You have worked in senior positions in other cities. You know more about the sort of staff expectations within City Hall than either Joey and I ever could, having been a leader within that space. What has, in your opinion, been the city's response to this new leak? The stuff that Joey talked about the city manager's response to Sewergate. I mean, where are you with this, and how did you feel when you heard the news?
Well, like everyone else, it was really sickening. And it's like, we need facts, we need information. And so I give Mr. Winters, who I don't know, huge credit for scrambling to get in front of this and say, okay, this has happened, let's tell the truth, and to be front and center with the media. I give them huge credit for the explanations they provided this afternoon, because I can imagine that people worked through the weekend to get the update for council. Our company office in Hamilton is not far from this location. And on Thursday, when I left, they were to go to meetings, they were digging up that intersection. So I knew they were right on it, like right on it. They had contractors out there, they had the intersection secured, and they were dealing with it. And so I give them a lot of credit for dealing with that, for coming clean. Even today, just telling people the volume that was 337 million liters over the 26 years. And I think it's also important to remember as well that 26 years ago, the region of Hamilton Wentworth existed, and they ran the sewer and water system. It wasn't even the city of Hamilton at the time. And I would venture to say that there's probably very few people left who actually worked in that department who are still with the city of Hamilton. So all of that is very good. The mayor getting right on top of it, releasing her statement, speaking to the media, all excellent. That's what this election was about. Don't hide this stuff. Tell us the truth. Tell us what you know when you know it. Really would have hoped that the city manager would have been there, out there front and center.
So she was in her office and she refused to come out and she refuses to answer questions about this. This was a very typical strategy out of the city manager's office that we've seen numerous times. When a scandal hits, they give us the junior most staff. If you recall, when Mark Lemire came out, that was the IT person who was a white nationalist. The communication staff in the city manager's office gave us the city manager who was on day 3, and her repeated line was, I just arrived, I'm getting to the bottom of it. And I do not tolerate that. And even there, I remember very directly, Miss Smith was trying to dodge my question because I said, "When did you learn about this? How did you learn about it?" Simple question. She did the, "Well, I've had a lot of briefings the last 2 days. It's my beginning. It's been a lot of information." I said, "Okay, so Miss Smith, what you're telling me is that I just want to clarify that potentially you were told that an individual who the federal courts have declared a threat to national security, who was one of Canada's most notorious white supremacists, was working one degree separated from you as the city manager, that your staff may have told you this and it wouldn't have registered to the level that you could recall right now if you were briefed on it, that it just wouldn't be that." And she dodged a little bit. I said, "No, I'm asking you because you're saying that you can't recall when you learned it. Did you learn it from your staff or did you learn it from the Vice article?" And at that point, she realized she had to give me an answer
Yeah.
because, and then it wasn't that they got briefed. The city manager's office staff came out scrambling to end the press conference. That was disappointing, but that's exactly what we've seen out of Jeanette Smith throughout her tenure, is that when big things are happening, she is not there.
And let me jump ahead, Joey, just because a more recent example, I think, maybe of that. I mean, we see on this leak again, a junior staffer, but the election, the multiple serious errors in the election coming out of the city clerk's office. The city manager should have come out, and instead, what did we get? An apology letter from the clerk that ended up revealing the addresses, email addresses of a whole bunch of people, in a big privacy breach. I mean, where is the city manager's sense of both urgency and accountability? And I want to go to you on this, Mary Lou. I've kind of never seen such a low profile city manager. I mean, Jeanette came out to the anti-hate rallies we were doing at City Hall in the Summer of Hate. Since then, what does she do to give us any sense that she has the city management well under control when we see these kind of errors and we don't see her talking to it?
Well, we don't see her, and so we don't know what the conversations and the accountability is. And the election issues, and there were multiple issues. There was the mail-in ballot mess. There was people getting their notices late. There were things that went on election day that are too numerous to mention, and it was all no city manager, no apology for the multiple issues that went on, and no real acknowledgement of the seriousness of it. So, people were turned away from the polls because they were told erroneous information. I voted in the advance poll. I went in and I had not received my voter card. And I was initially told I couldn't vote. And I said, yes, I absolutely can. And I'm going to assure you that I'm on the voters list and I have identification. And so they let me vote.
But you had to fight for it. You had
I
to
did.
know that. I did too in the early advance polls, but I had to know that. And I remember election day, my husband went to go vote and he said the polls closed at our local thing. And then the local candidate who was running came up and said, no, the polls are back open. Like it was a shit show. And multiple
It was.
before, after, and during.
And so the city was using online voter checkoff. So it was a cloud-based solution where you go in to vote, they check that you're on the voters list on a computer, and they check you off. And campaigns were getting updates every half hour. So we got our last update at 1:00 in the afternoon, and then the entire system went down. And we never got another update. And now we're hearing stories of, well, people who voted on a certain advance poll day in a certain ward, their information was never really correct. We had supporters tell us that they had voted, and on election day, before the city system went down, the city's saying, no, they haven't voted. And you'd think, okay, one or two people, maybe it's not a big deal, but it was a lot more than one or two people. And then people being told to go vote just anywhere in Dundas because the lines were so long. It's like, well, we can't handle it. We're overwhelmed. Come back.
How does it feel having run mayoral campaign against a clear front runner with huge name recognition and all the advantage, and coming within 1 percentage point, I don't know, 1,600 votes or something, knowing, and nobody from the Keanin campaign has made any suggestion that the results weren't valid, But knowing the amount of chaos and frustration and maybe lost votes, I mean, how does that feel? Seeing the city mismanage it like this and knowing that it may have had an effect, you'll never know.
It's really sickening. You know, we made a decision as a campaign to accept the results and support the will of the voters and support the decision because it's the right thing for the city. And if there's one thing I know about Keanin Loomis, he will always do the right thing for the city. It is city before self with Keanin Loomis. And so that is from him. You know, it doesn't feel good. I look at other races that were decided by less than 100 votes and, you know, Ward 14 and Ward 11, and you look at those and you go, what the heck? And we will never know. We will never know because the answer from the city clerk is the campaign's access to the voters list was shut down at midnight on October 24th. You have no legal right to look at the voters list. And the manual checkoff that they substituted is sealed in the ballot boxes, and those ballot boxes can't be opened. So it really doesn't engender confidence. And and this goes to what we saw with the last council, you may be legally correct, but in the court of public opinion and in the confidence and faith and trust and transparency, it's not there. And that is something that we are just not seeing a conversation about. Now, the clerk will report on the election to this council, and it will be a very interesting conversation, I can imagine, and I hope so, because, you know, the voting system for municipal elections in Ontario, it relies on the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation list, which is released on September 1st. It does not capture tenants properly. And so tenants generally have to sign a form and attest that they live where they live, and then they're entitled to vote in their ward. It's a really imperfect system and it's fraught with problems with the voters list to begin with. You layer on what happened on election day here, and you just think there has to be a better way. And there has to be some acknowledgement from the staff leadership that what went on was not acceptable.
Where is the accountability to the city clerk for screwing up this many times? I mean, that election, there were multiple errors coming out of the clerk's office. There wasn't the apology from the city manager.
I can tell you that on election day, the city manager's office sends me plenty of nasty emails. I've never before in my professional journalism career had to involve a lawyer to tell a government body to treat me in a respectful tone. It just reached a point where I had to involve my lawyer. Like, it's been insane. And I get that the city manager's office, being from the old guard and appointed by the old guard, sees me as the enemy of their state. But still, there's rules even in war, if you would say. But I remember on election day, the angry emails I was getting from them of, you're telling people this and this. I'm like, it's because your elections people are, well, we've changed that. We've changed this. How we're not having as many problems. And eventually what seems to have occurred is, I believe the Ministry of Municipal Affairs told them, you need to declare a local emergency because you have that many problems. And we had to declare a local emergency because the election was so messed up. And in terms of the accountability, well, as far as the city manager seems to be concerned, she's has full confidence in the city
That makes
clerk.
me insane. I mean, it's insane that we have to get an emergency done because of the mistakes made in an election that may or may not have cost some candidates their careers and the people their will. And there's nothing.
This is where we're very fortunate that these candidates were all honorable. And I've had coffee with a few of them that, let's face it, if they went to a judge and said this many problems occurred, the judge would invalidate the election. We were well past the point of election invalidation. And we continue to act as if we are a backwater township of 500 people where Joe's your cousin and everybody else's cousin. We're a single tier municipality, the third largest in the province. And regarding the leadership at the city hall, the new council needs to be asking themselves right now, is Jeanette Smith the person to lead the city of Hamilton for the next 7 years? And if the answer is not an enthusiastic yes, they need to pull the parachute in the contract, thank her for her service. She serves at the pleasure of council. Thank her for her service and go out and find the city manager who can lead us for the next 10 years. And the talent pool for CAOs is generally small, but there's a few people out there right now in consulting who are applying for city manager roles who would be phenomenal in a city of this size.
The fact that
And
it wasn't her fault, but remember the whole cloak and dagger thing around her even getting selected, Joey, where people had to go out, Hamilton community members took a bus to another city for this secret meeting at a hotel for the interviews of city managers, because that's how the old guard operated. I mean, everything about her tenure has been, in my mind, quite disappointing, from her lack of accountability and visibility and these major things that have gone on. I'm worried that this new council, with all of their intentions and professionalism, are not going to see the performance from the city staff under her leadership.
I'm sitting here in this council chamber and I've been watching. So we found out this morning from Public Health Services that apparently the city manager on her signature put out a strong recommendation to staff early last week that they should be wearing masks inside. That's a strong recommendation signed by the city manager. Miss Smith does not wear a mask indoors despite her own strong recommendation. I've sit here watching last week, and all of the senior managers, even today, the public health staff are wearing masks. The general manager level does not here. And that's leadership by example is a fundamental, and I'm not seeing it. And
sorry, go ahead, finish your point, and then I want to jump to Mary Lou.
And I watched Friday, they talked about 311. And apparently, if you were to believe city staff, people love 546 City. They love the service they're getting from the city. It's great. And what was most disturbing about that, beyond like the fact that councilors asked the same question twice and the staff are giving their usual spin, and they're learning that this new council doesn't want spin. They're not into the rah, we're the greatest ever, despite all the evidence. But at the very end of it, I'm looking over there because I'm remembering the visual. The staff member who said 546 City is great, fist bumped with the city manager's director of strategic initiatives after the meeting and I was just like, I've never seen that before in the council chamber. I've seen it when like a junior staff member is given a presentation that's phenomenal, but
yeah,
two very senior most staff. And where I go with this is that this new council I'm watching, they're going to repeat the same mistakes. The very definition of insanity is putting the same people in charge of innovation that have failed to innovate for a decade.
Thank you for saying that, Joey. Mary Lou, you said we're not having these conversations as a city, not the mess ups of the election, not the accountability around that clerk. Then we layer on top of it all the other things that the city manager has been MIA on. Do you have confidence that this city manager is going to be able to help the electorate get what they wanted when they elected all these new councillors in? Or are we going to have more of that old guard blame shifting, hiding from accountability nonsense we've seen the last 4 years?
I think we're going to have the latter. And in fairness to Jeanette Smith, it predates her, because all of the administrative processes and all of the culture of don't tell council bad news, only, like Connie Smith, only good news, that predates Jeanette, because there was a time where if you were a staff person and brought forward, uncomfortable news, you got your head shot off pretty quickly. And so what happens in an organization when that's the culture? Well, you don't bring bad news forward. You bring good news forward. And that's what we've been seeing. And that's the culture that is being continued. But
do we have, I don't know if you want to call it hope or confidence or concern, however you want to frame it, that this new group of counselors coming in with all of their ambition, all of their professionalism and professional experience are going to be able to move the needle on the level of service that we can expect to get from our city staff with, to your point, Mary Lou, this long culture of raw mediocrity, hiding problems, and truly not being proactive. They haven't even got the council names on their freaking website a month after the election.
You know what? I do believe that this group of counselors have the wherewithal to really challenge the status quo. And I say that because this was a change election. I think everybody has acknowledged that. And I think that the last council in particular, the comments around, well, that's not the way we do things around here, when Maureen Wilson, Narinder Nan, and JP Danko would ask questions, and well, you've got to put your time in type of comments. So there's a whole group of counselors who are who have the ability, and I would say they have the political capital from the electorate to challenge the status quo. You know, the worst answer to a question is because we've always done it that way. So do not accept that ever as an answer that anybody can give this council. But the reality is they are going to have to decide as a group what their priorities are. And I would really hope that they can come together about what their priorities are for change and really focus on those, because you can, organizationally, you can move a lot of issues a little bit, or you can pick a couple or three and go really hard and get behind them, and you can make significant progress on them. And I really hope that they choose the 2 or 3 issues that they can make significant progress on. And for me, it's housing and it's transit and the infrastructure deficit.
I think that they need to get new leadership. I mean, look at how badly mismanaged the election was. This was not heirs of things happen. This was heirs of incompetence, failure to do process, failure to test equipment. Somehow there's 444 municipalities in Ontario. And right now, I'm pretty sure 443 of them have the list of councillors on their website. The city of Hamilton has not even put the list of the councillors up because our new, innovative, great website, as I'm told, and I've actually received emails, and Mary Lou may find this humorous. I received an email from the city manager's office asking why I wasn't talking about how great their chatbot was during the election, because it was such a great website. They don't even have the list of councillors up. But I will leave you with the
Couldn't tell me where to vote when I tried to find an advanced poll. I tried the chat bot and I gave up. I was like, forget it. So I just
it gave the wrong information. It gave the wrong information in places. But turning to a hopeful sign. Today there was a slide put up over there. The viewers can't see the projector, but I'm looking at it, which was the bacterial levels in Cootes Paradise leading into the sewer gate. And you could see the spike and you could see the data, but that data was never released. And the staff member was talking about how water's really focused on data. And multiple counselors said, okay, so when are we making that open data? And said, because there are lots of citizens out there, there's students who are doing theses, people will notice things that we may miss.
Right.
And we need to put the data out so that people find our problems and we can solve them. And Mr. Winters, to his credit, was, yeah, that'd be great because we want to solve things. And right there is a different mindset of council, whereas the previous council was, we'll claim that we're going to make things public, but we're going to be as passive aggressive and as useless and bury it in PDF.
This was a really important election. You know, I wish our council every success. I truly do. I have a new councillor in Ward 4 I'm very excited about. First Asian woman
Tammy's
on
awesome.
council. Yeah.
Actually, finally meet her at the OShow party in
Yeah.
person to meet her, and she is lovely and brilliant, and I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, that is Tammy Wang, councillor for Ward 4. And I wish them well. I wish them success. I wish them collaboration. I wish them respect for each other and for the citizens and for the staff. And, you know, you're going to have to make hard decisions. You are. And we need to do so in a way that advances the city and isn't politics as usual. Because if it's politics as usual, in 4 years, we will have to have another change election because the electorate clearly said, we're done.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that. As you were listing about you wish them collaboration and you wish them this and wish them that, I thought, I wish them the courage to make the tough calls, to make them early and often so that they have the potential to make the change that they were voted for, so that we don't have in 4 years an angry population feeling disenfranchised again, that we can actually make those changes happen. And it's not easy in leadership to take a hard look at other leadership and say, no, we're not aligned. It's not going to work like that anymore. We've got to make a change. I've done it in my career. I'm sure you've done it in your career.
Yep.
It isn't easy, but it's necessary sometimes if you want to see a vision realized and if you want to be able to make the kind of progress that it seems this council wants to make. So we'll see where they go with that. But thank you for being on the OShow. We will have you back. I have a feeling we'll have a lot to unpack for a long time with this new term of council. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome. And Laura, I really hope that with this council, we are able to go from Ryan Moran's fail list to council's success list. Let's set that as our goal.
And Ryan Moran told us last week on the OShow that he doesn't want to have to do another fail list, but he will be watching nonetheless.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you for watching the OShow. Of course, subscribe on YouTube so you can get our shows whenever we put them up, and stay engaged in what's happening in our city. We got a great new council, but we all still have to stay engaged. Thanks for watching the OShow.
Absolutely.